So it was super painful watching that, and the churches were going to be led by the lead pastor. He would make all the decisions, but it set up for kind of a narcissistic kind of leadership. There's a danger of a narcissistic kind of leadership that everything's revolving around that one man, and all the decisions go from that one man. So, or woman or whatever. So that I felt very muffled as a leader even. And I probably would have left earlier. I wasn't almost done for a lot of years. When there's that kind of stress and bind where you can't really process, you can't really be heard, can't really be seen and known, then my conviction now is the program and the vision is more important than the people, and whether it's leaders or not leaders. And I believe that's the upside down of the way Jesus meant the church to be.
Welcome to Stories from the Revolution. I'm your host, John White, and the co-founder of LK10.com. On this podcast, we share real-life stories from the front lines of the relational revolution, where people all over the world are rediscovering a simple, relational way of living out church just as Jesus intended. If you're a current or former church leader who's felt restless or wounded in traditional church settings, or if you're longing for deeper community, deeper leadership, and deeper joy, you're in the right place. Let's dive in. Have you ever served faithfully in church leadership and still felt unseen? Like your gifts and the gifts of those around you were slowly being silenced? What happens when the very place meant to nurture your calling becomes the place that wounds your soul? In today's episode, I talk with my long-term friend, Kent Larson. After decades in a charismatic megachurch environment, Kent found himself questioning if the very structure he served was actually quenching the life of the Spirit. What he discovered on the other side of burnout might just be the kind of freedom your soul is longing for. Here's how his journey unfolded. So I am here today with, I want to say, a very old friend, Kent Larson. And I'm guessing 50 years, Kent.
Yeah.
So we were at Fuller Seminary together, and then after seminary, we served in the same church on the pastoral staff, and then we in different directions after that, but have remained flat friends over the years. And I know that part of your story has involved being involved in what we would be calling a traditional church structure. And so I've asked you if you would just share a little bit about that. What was that like? What was the emotion? What was it that really touched your heart there in a way that was hurtful? And why was that? So just tell a bit of that story.
So do you want me to talk about the traditional church season of my life or just the more recent?
The 25 years on staff with. Let's do that. We could do a really long.
Oh, we could do a long one, but maybe I'll just start with a quick comment that many years I was in a traditional church setting, then entered into the Vineyard movement, which is a charismatic environment that had values for participation and for worship and the gifts of the Spirit, and was very excited about that when we entered into that, and was in about 16 years in that movement. And then I got hired to be a pastor at a Vineyard church, an associate pastor, and spent 25 years there in a particular Vineyard church. And so my experience there, I had a lot of good experience in the Vineyard, a lot of wonderful things, but I also had a lot of disappointments and a lot of frustrations. So I would say that those years in leadership were the most painful part of my story here. And they were painful in the sense that the values that I hold dear and I have had for a lot of years, but have been endorsed and clarified in more recently, was that I just highly value hearing the voice of God, connecting with people, allowing people to be seen and heard and validated and included, But in my experience in this particular part of the vineyard, um, that was quenched in some significant ways. And as I've evaluated that and retired about a year and a half ago, and being able to kind of look back and think about it, a lot of that was related to uh, uh, a one-man leadership style and a visionary leadership style that basically we build the church around vision more important than around people.
Mm.
And so my experience was very painful because of valuing people and wanting them to be seen and heard and activated and included and brought around the table, yes, you could say, so that everybody had a place at the table and everybody had a voice, at every level, whether they're leaders or they're not leaders. And so that was a difficult part of the story. So there was a lot of pain of frustration and not being heard as a leader, even on the leadership staff, of saying, hey, we really need to work on including people. We really need to create small groups so that they can have a place instead of just the leaders that are on staff or just the leaders that are super connected to the vision of the church. Um, so that was frustrating. It was quenching. I felt dishonored. I felt um, uh, held back, muffled, I guess you could say, from being able to uh, not only have a voice myself about some of these things, but also empowering other people and really being able to hear the sheep, as it were, to hear the cry of the sheep, to to create an environment of belonging where they felt fully seen and understood. Now, I don't want to overemphasize it. There was a measure of that of all those things that were still in the environment, and some people really got healed, really thrived for many years in this environment. And in some ways, I did too. A lot of needs were met for me and my family, um, but there were some structures and some practices that held back the fullness of what I believe church is supposed to be all about.
And again, in simple terms, we might say, uh, in general, sort of exceptions,
Right.
the people in the church didn't have a voice, and that was true even on the leadership level. Again, it's a degree thing, but that was the general,
It is. Yeah.
the general.
Yeah. So, and it's certainly not, you know, it's certainly not unique to this particular church. My experience in the longer years of the church is I've hardly ever been on a leadership team where there was an understanding of how to process and include people's perspective and then listen to God together and discern what the Lord was saying about the programs, about the vision, about decisions that are made with various people's involvement. So it was super painful watching that, and the churches were going to be led by the lead pastor. He would make all the decisions. And so some lead pastors probably didn't take that as seriously as others. And so depending on their personality, but it set up for kind of a narcissistic kind of leadership. There's a danger of a narcissistic kind of leadership that everything's revolving around that one man and all the decisions go from that one man. So, or woman or whatever. So that is, that was a, that's one of the weaknesses and the frustrations of those years.
And I think the reason a lot of people like you ended up leaving the church, becoming duns.
Right.
What was it, Dr. Wilder, who said that, is it 40% of senior pastors test out as narcissistic personality disorder, something like that? It's incredible.
Yeah, something like that. I maybe it was higher, but anyway, yeah,
Gotcha.
yeah, and it relates to culture of the way we do church, not just the leaders that arise, but the fact that that kind of leader fits with the way we structure church.
That's right.
And I started to understand that more and more over the years. Is like, and of course, the frustration and the stress continued to grow because I could never talk about that in our environment. There was an environment to challenge the way we did staff meetings, or the way we made decisions, or the way we organize the small groups and classes and everything in the environment. There just was not, because, there was just a conviction, well, this is the way, this is how we do it. And, whatever. So that I felt very muffled as a leader even. And, I probably would have left earlier. I was almost done for a lot of years. And, but there's a dynamic there that's also a dilemma for people that are in pain like that are in leadership, and their whole income is wrapped around, their, years of establishing a life for their family and everything, in that environment. So that's a challenge.
You really feel trapped, I think, in a lot of ways.
You
A
feel
lot
trapped.
a lot of pastors do.
Get trapped. And you also, if you have a good heart about honoring authority and all those kinds of things, there's the dilemma of that says, well, when do I say no, and when do I go? When do I say no? When do I go in a way that's honoring to the Lord and honoring to the people, and not divisive, and not trying to, break up a church, or, that kind of thing. So there's, when there's that kind of stress and bind where you can't really process, you can't really be heard, can't really be seen and known, then my conviction now is the program and the vision is more important than the people, and whether it's leaders or not leaders. It's an upside, and I believe that's the upside down of the way Jesus meant the church to be.
Yeah, for sure.
He meant the people to be first and be lifted up and empowered.
Can we talk about? Oh, I'm sorry. Go ahead.
Yeah. No, that's all. That's
The book, The Relational Revolution.
Mhm.
The title is Rediscovering Church as Heart-to-Heart Connection. Which
Right.
is exactly what you're talking about. So you and I kind of really reconnected 15 years ago or something. And so you've been on the journey with me in Luke 10. What have you discovered in the Luke 10 community and the teaching and all that has addressed those issues and values that you were carrying in your heart?
Yeah, well, I mean, without a doubt, when I discovered that you guys were shaping this model of relational communities, vibrant families of Jesus, I mean, I totally lit up, and I was like, okay. And I had enough history with you that I knew some of the sources of what you had learned, and of how to facilitate small groups and how to empower people, and the values there. And that's what the values that I was carrying for years. I mean, I could go way back into other stuff about that, but I won't now at this point. But so yeah, I discovered that Luke 10 had pioneered various kinds of training, and pioneered how you do a small group, how you use rounds to give everyone a voice, how you manage rounds so that people don't dominate, like, the extroverts dominate and the introverts don't say anything, and how you facilitate as opposed to lead or teach, or, you kind of dominate a meeting by a strong leader. So it was exactly what I was looking for, and what I was trying to practice myself in the context, but it wasn't endorsed and it wasn't empowered. I had already been dipping into other relational streams like the life model works, and for a number of years, and we had been doing classes, and we've been trying to do some of this stuff. But when I ran into you again and discovered that you were pioneering this, like, oh my gosh, this is perfect. I mean, this is amazing. And I'll never forget the first time I came to a Luke 10 conference, and we did table church, and I was like, wow, I was sold immediately. Like, this is how we ought to do church, where people have a small, safe group that they can get connected to, and it's facilitated in a way where everybody does get to be heard and seen and understood. And then the skill of also learning, how do you listen to God together? And how does that happen? Because in all my years, and I just turned 75, in all my years being in the church, I met a Christian became a Christian when I was 5. So for 70 years I've been in church. I have never seen in any leadership team a group that's known how to listen to God corporately and make decisions.
That's an amazing statement, Kent. Wow.
Which is actually terrible. Like when you think about, I think about Acts when they sent out Paul and Barnabas. They knew how to listen to the Holy Spirit and send out, the first missionaries. It's like, okay, but we haven't known that. We don't know how to do that. And when I ran into Luke 10, it's like, oh my goodness, we're pioneering these tools that allow us to hear the voice of the Lord, and then deeper in, starting to learn some of the governmental understanding of divine governance, is what we call it in Luke 10. Is like, wow, this is brilliant. This is amazing. This could change the world. So that, yeah, it was.
So someplace along the line, you went through Church 101,
right?
leader team and facilitator training. And now you have ended up, I know, teaching many Church 101 courses. You've I'd like to say the benevolent virus infected people with this Luke 10 virus. And I think once you've retired, you've had much more freedom. What's it been like, just briefly, in this season of your life, to be able to be free to put these things into practice?
Oh, I feel like there's this huge, heavy burden fell off my shoulders. I felt like I finally get to play the real game that I was meant for.
Yeah.
I feel like I had already been doing a bunch of it, even outside the church before I retired. And I actually felt like the Lord landed on me. In fact, he did, in a supernatural way, and he kicked me out. He just said, it's time, boom, get out of here. And then I just feel like I've been just so excited ever since. I'm leading artist groups all over the world. I'm doing training with spiritual fathers and mothers in different parts of the country. I have been deeply involved in the Luke 10 leader team that's been just become some of my best friends. And in fact, I'm in 2 leader teams actually, that are amongst some significant leaders, as well. And it's just, doors keep opening to be able to, multiply this, both directly in the Luke 10 flow, and also even a little bit outside with other kinds of groups. There's an artist organization that's totally received the rhythms and the values and practices of Luke 10. They actually built their whole new nonprofit based on the foundation of these rounds and these values of hearing each other's heart and hearing God's heart.
Wow. Well, I'm so excited to see how God is using you these days, and freedom that you have to be who you always in your heart. So thank you for sharing your story with us, and I pray it'll be an encouragement to a lot of folks. So thank you, my friend.
All right. Thank you.
Kent's story is one so many leaders will recognize. Faithful service, unmet longing, and a deep ache for something more, something healthier, something that looks more like Jesus. And here's the good news, that something more isn't a pipe dream. It's real, it's relational, and it's already happening in living rooms and Zoom calls all over the world through the LK10 community. Maybe you felt that same longing Kent described, wishing for a way to lead that doesn't burn you out, a community where every voice matters, where listening to Jesus together is the norm, not the exception. If you've been wondering whether there's a more life-giving way to be the church, there is, and it starts with a conversation. At Luke 10, we call this an intro call. No pressure, no program, just a chance to be heard and to discover if what we're doing in Luke 10 is the answer your heart's been waiting for. Just go to lk10.com/intro to schedule a simple personal intro call. That's lk10.com/intro. This could be the beginning of something new. Thanks for joining me today on Stories from the Revolution. If today's conversation stirred something in you, would you please consider passing it along to someone who needs to hear it? Just tap that share button and send it their way by text, email, or social. Until next time, keep listening, keep loving, and keep leading like Jesus.